Video Lesson 2.4, Intro to Chinese Philosophies. There will be a follow-up video to this that you will be assigned next class, and that will be Video Lesson 2.5, which will wrap up our discussion about these Chinese philosophies. So first of all, what is a philosophy? A philosophy is studying the nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. So it's similar to a religion in that it is a set of beliefs, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with spirituality or any gods or the afterlife or anything like that most religions have. So they don't have any teachings about the creation either. They focus on the present life. So they are focused more on the world around us, how we live, how we should interact with other people. So religions can be philosophies, and philosophies can be religions, but they're not the same thing. The Chinese believed in 3 of these philosophies that emerged during the 7 Warring States period. And we're going to talk more in depth about 2 of them, and then finally we'll tack on Buddhism after we have our writing assessment. But for now, we're just going to focus on 3 philosophies. Firstly, we have Confucianism. Then there is Taoism. Then there is legalism. And Taoism and legalism also sort of come out of Confucianism. So Confucianism is kind of the granddaddy of all the philosophies. And these philosophies help shape political structure, social interactions, and culture. So the way a person feels their government should act, the way a government treats their people, also the way citizens act towards each other, the way families act and what they hold important, and other things similar to that. So traditions and practices that are common in or aligned with these philosophies, that becomes apparent in their culture. So as we talked about, these 3 philosophies in particular emerged out of the period of the 7 Warring States. So during that really chaotic time, people were looking for truth and new ways to think about the chaotic, violent world they lived in. So they're looking for an answer or a solution to this problem. So they were also looking for a new set of beliefs that should govern the society, because the mandate of heaven and the system they had believed in for thousands of years was not working. So they needed to have something that would end this constant warfare, govern society in a way that everybody accepted and everybody supported. So before we get started on what Confucianism and Taoism are, I want us to start a timeline. So in your notes, I want us to turn to a new blank page. And if you hold it so it's landscape orientation, it's like the long way, you can draw a line right in the middle of the paper. Now you want to have enough room on the top and the bottom of the line. At the beginning of the line, we're going to put this. The Zhou dynasty falls and the 7 Warring States begins. This occurred around 500 BCE. And these are very approximate dates. So just so you guys can kind of get a picture of the order of events here. We're going to be building and adding to this timeline as this unit progresses. But for right now, we're just going to add 2 things. Confucius writes his thoughts and lessons developing Confucianism. And this occurs generally about the same time as the 7 Warring States begins. So Confucius is a scholar and a philosopher, so he puts all his thoughts and ideas and his beliefs down, and then he teaches other people about them. And as these become more popular, the 7 Warring States gets worse and worse and worse. So these were contemporary events, which means they occur at the same time. And then this keeps going for 200 to 300 years until Qin Shi Huang takes power and unifies China. This chunk of time, between 500 BC and 221 BC, is the time period that we're going to be studying when we study the philosophies. So before Shi Huangdi even was born, we're going to be studying what society was like, what the 7 Warring States was like, and what people tried to do to change it. So our first philosophy that we're going to study is Confucianism. It was founded by Confucius, and he was a Chinese philosopher who lived around 500 BC, as we marked on our timeline. This part you can continue in your notes, so you can set aside your timeline for now. Confucius believed in the good of human nature, and he focused heavily on morals. So focused heavily on right versus wrong, teaching people right versus wrong, and that people should adhere to these relationships for the good of the community rather than their own personal gain. And he also believed that everybody was naturally good inside. So everybody, that perfectibility, educability, words that we looked at in the reading, those were focused on the good in human nature. Everybody is capable of being perfect. And the record of his teachings are called the Analects, and that's what we're going to look at next class. Confucianism lays out 5 basic relationships of humanity, and they are fundamental relationships, which means they are the foundation to Confucianism. The first one is parent and child, then husband and wife, older sibling and younger sibling, friend to friend, and ruler or sovereign and subject. So these 5 relationships form the basis of how society should function. And they are all based on this idea of filial piety. So it's studying this relationship as one is the parent and one is the child. So for instance, in older sibling and younger sibling, the parent is the older sibling and the younger sibling is the child. Now this means that the younger sibling should respect the older sibling like an elder. And same with ruler and subject. The ruler is the more powerful part of the relationship, and the subject is the more respectful, subordinate part of the relationship. Okay, our next philosophy number 2, is called Taoism. You might recognize this symbol up in the corner here. Taoism is believed to have been created by a man named Lao Tzu, and he has some very famous quotes, one of which is hanging in my room. Tao means the way. And Tao is actually an aspect of Confucianism, but Taoists didn't really believe that Confucius really went far enough with explaining or respecting the Tao. So the Tao, or the way, is the study of the nature of reality. So it's what's actually going around them, as opposed to religious beliefs. What happens after you die, what happens, who's up there, things like that. So Taoists study how chaos and reality, or order, interact. So if you think of the yin-yang, that's the symbol up in the corner, you can see that within the dark spot, there's a little bit of light, but there is an equal amount of lightness with an equal amount of darkness. And these two balance each other out. So neither one overpowers the other. They're equal. And they also interact and react with each other. And Taoists adhered to inaction. So adhered means to stick to or follow. So think of adhesive, that means glue. So adhered to inaction. Do nothing and let the natural forces of the universe act on the world. So Taoists were very passive. They did not interact with their society or each other very much. They just wanted to see what would happen naturally, and that was the way. So what would the universe would automatically or naturally do, that is the Tao. So they believed that that should be the priority, and that was their philosophy. So they allowed these forces to interact, and the black and the white, the dark and the light, like the yin-yang, are not opposites but counterparts. So they don't oppose each other like opposites would, but they balance each other out and interact with each other. So male and female. Think about the gender roles. When we thought about the Aztecs, the male and female each played different roles in society. Both parts were necessary for the entire society to function. So they weren't opposites because they didn't cancel each other out, but they worked together to create a whole, even though they were not the same, in fact, very different. And Taoism is structured by another document called the Tao Te Ching, which we are also going to study next class.